Welcome. I just finished watching the South Carolina debate on CBS. And if you're as unlucky as I was, you got to watch it too. Because the big takeaway from tonight was that this was a horrific debate. It was not moderated well. The moderation was really bad. Norah O'Donnell and Gayle King, without saying anything else about them, just did a horrific job asking the candidates the questions, following through, keeping everyone to their limit, asking follow ups. Nothing stayed on topic. No one was really pressed on the questions. We didn't get, you know, any thoughts that were well thought out and kind of followed through. And there was a lot of over talk between the candidates. And so for me as a viewer, I didn't enjoy it much at all. I was quite frustrated. And I know I'm not the only one. I did check social media, and two of my favorite accounts, Crystal Ball and Emma Vigland, they both agreed. So I was watching and I was just thinking, sometimes I get a little insecure. I'm like, do I not have a good enough attention span? Am I not sharp enough to keep up with all the things that they're talking about? And they basically said the same thing. Crystal Ball said that the loser of tonight was the American people. And Emma Vigland said that she had a really tough time assessing who the winners and losers were. The only loser that I have out of this are Norah O'Donnell and Gayle King. I don't think they should be asked to moderate a political debate. I don't think that they were up for the task. I don't think they did a good job. Look, I think that when you have a debate, you need to take into account the context in which the debate is happening. And the context is this: as much as the media wants to tell you that Bernie Sanders is not the front runner, Bernie Sanders is not winning, he won the first three contests. In Iowa, he got 6,000 more votes than Pete Buttigieg. He won in New Hampshire. He did superbly better than everyone else in Nevada. And yet they don't center the debate around the attacks that are going to go towards him. So even before I started watching the debate, I made like a little flow chart of like, what are the things they're going to attack Bernie Sanders on? They're going to go after him on Cuba. They're going to go after him on Russian interference. They're going to go after him on healthcare, as they always do, electability, all these points. And as those things came up, I was expecting, thorough talking points, thorough trains of thought, and none of that actually happened. And they did a really bad job teasing out those attacks. They should have also been ready for the attacks on Bloomberg, which they were there. Bernie Sanders, the person who's the front runner, if that person, whoever that person is attacking, is the one to watch. And so because Sanders within the first minute goes after Mike Bloomberg, they should have also structured the debate to go around the attacks on Bloomberg. And look, I know that talking time is an issue. Everyone gets their chance to speak, but you start off with the debate questions about the talking points against Sanders. Let Sanders respond, then go in order and be structured and let each person have their time to speak, and always go back to Sanders. Let him get in a 20, 30-second response each time. So they didn't do that. They kind of it was a free-for-all. Mayor Pete just talks however much he wants. This is why people don't like him, because he's a privileged prick who just takes it upon himself to say whatever he wants for however long he wants to. And yeah, anyways, we're at a point where, look, people are having questions. They see that Sanders is in the lead, and now like the questions are coming back up about how are you going to pay for Medicare for all and everything. Why can't we see that in a debate? Why can't we see him answer the damn question? Well, he's got 1:45 to speak. Give him 3-4 minutes. Then let someone else respond for 2 minutes. Like, we're getting to the point where we need to see the actual substance, and this format is not allowing the people to see the substance. Instead, we have to actually go see the candidate in person to do it. So this platform is not really effective in informing viewers, and a lot of times this platform is the only place where a lot of viewers actually get their information about the candidates. So it's quite unfortunate. But then again, there wasn't much substance to be delivered, so no one actually got in the good points and the rebuttal. The only one that I think was good on going after Sanders and healthcare was Elizabeth Warren. And even that, it wasn't a substantive talking point. It was just an approach kind of thing. Anyways, I'll get into that. Like I said, the losers of the debate were the moderators. Everyone, I put them at, they were just kind of equal. Everything that they said kind of fed into where they stand already, into who they are playing to. So I didn't see anything major. The only thing was that I said that Bernie Sanders needed to weather the storm for this debate. And if he does that, he's in a good position. He did. So I put that as a plus. But things were interesting. You saw a crowd that was actually quite hostile to Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, and quite friendly to Mike Bloomberg, which I thought was quite curious. There could be there's theories on Twitter, like, is he actually getting the support, or is he paying people to sit? That's one thing that people said. I have no evidence of that. But I think it's quite odd. Like, how do you, I don't know. I thought it was weird at the points where they did cheer for him, or they booed against a critique that Sanders had of him, or when Warren went after him as well, people booed. So it was, I don't know. Anyways, I'm just going to go through the candidates one by one. I don't have much on because it wasn't that good of a debate, like I said. Buttigieg, look, I'm trying to, like, be nice. I'm trying to, like, keep it together, but he makes me want to tear my hair out. I was just thinking, I was yelling at the TV. I just want him to shut the F up, especially when there was a whole thing. I forget which part it was, but Sanders was speaking, and Sanders, like, directed his point towards Pete Buttigieg right away, and he says, "Let me ask you a question." This was like the first thing that he says in his answer to the moderator's question. He goes, "Let me ask you a question, Pete. How are we going to pay for the for healthcare?" And he said it was a rhetorical question, meaning it does not elicit an actual response. Motherfucker Pete Buttigieg takes it upon himself to start talking over Bernie Sanders. It had to do with the allegations that Bernie Sanders is a socialist and that he supports socialist policies and socialist regimes around the world. And so Bernie was like, well, do you think that healthcare for all is a radical idea? Do you think blah, blah, blah is a radical idea? And he just went through his points. But anyways, it was rhetorical questions, and Pete Buttigieg was speaking over him. And Pete Buttigieg was speaking over a lot of people tonight, and I found it quite annoying. And he's a real problem on stage. He doesn't bring any substance, and he also interferes with people actually talking about things. So in the past, I said that this was important for him, and I guess it still is. If he could get everyone to talk about nothing, and if he could continue talking about nothing like he always does, it would be fantastic for him, because then he could continue to convince people that his campaign means something when it actually doesn't. So yeah, but he attacked Bernie, which was expected because Bernie is the front runner, and he did attack him on healthcare, on electability, on Russian interference, and on down ballot elections in November, meaning that he doesn't think that Bernie will be able to inspire people to come out and vote for the Democratic base, which Bernie's getting people out to vote. If he's getting people out to vote and he's head of the party, head of the ticket, that's good for the entire ticket. Bernie can then tell everyone down ballot. It's not that hard. The one good thing that Pete Buttigieg did, being that he's in South Carolina and he has a problem with African American voters, was I thought that he would. I thought that he needed in some way to show that he was good with the black population. And look, how are you going to do that in one night when you have a history of making up of what do you call it? Manufacturing, not I'm forgetting the word, but just coming up with fake black endorsements and sending them out to your email list. And when you have a history of as horrible as his is, of leading South Bend, Indiana, and with the police department and their race relations, he needed to do something to speak to the black community. And what he did was, when they asked about race to Pete Buttigieg, he talked specifically about black lived experience, being that there are 7 people on stage, 7 white candidates, none of whom are black, and they don't know what it's like to have that black lived experience. So that was good to his credit. Do I think it will actually give him something for South Carolina? No, not really, but he did need to do that. Mayor Bloomberg. All right. He's a focus on the stage because he is still the X factor. No one knows how his involvement in this race is going to affect the outcome. I think the big concern, and I think this is the concern for Bernie Sanders and Bernie Sanders supporters, is that there will be enough takeaway from Democratic votes on Super Tuesday and thereafter that Bernie Sanders, whoever is the front runner, won't be able to have a majority of delegates going into the convention later this summer. And so he's playing a position of kind of spoiler in that sense. Look, there was a few things. He got in a big fight on stage with Elizabeth Warren. The crowd seemed to be a little sympathetic towards Mike Bloomberg, but I don't think he had a great performance. He was just kind of status quo. He did better than last time, which how could you not? Because the last debate performance he had was horrific. His stop and frisk response was not good enough. He said basically that, it just went too far, which, come on, like you presided over this policy. You allowed it to get that far. Like, you could have stopped it from the beginning, and you were bragging about the fact that that it was, you weren't even bragging. No, you were actually saying that it should have gone after more black and Latino men, and saying it should have gone after less white men. I mean, that's ridiculous. So he wasn't even defending it that well. I don't know how he could get any traction with the black community in this country, but I guess money buys you a lot. So I have no idea. We're gonna have to see how he plays out on Super Tuesday. He also advocated for keeping troops in the Middle East, and so he's basically bringing up neoconservative talking points. This was the debate back in 2004 when both parties, Democratic and Republican Party, were very much in the neoconservative vein. Both of them were pro-war parties, and Mike Bloomberg is very much a pro-war candidate. So I thought that was very concerning. They brought up the war on obesity, his record in New York City. They were going after him on that, and he was saying, "Oh, I'm not going to govern the United States like I'm going to govern like I govern New York City." And then a lot of candidates, I think Sanders and Biden, both brought up Bloomberg's business relationship with Xi Jinping in China, and so they were talking about how that relationship was problematic and how that there's a conflict of interest there, being that Bloomberg does have business interests in China. And so they pressed him a lot on trade with China and what Bloomberg actually thought about authoritarianism over there. The other thing that was brought up were his taxes and how we don't know about his taxes. Warren kept pressing that point. And I think one thing that we're seeing with Bloomberg is he's in the vetting stage that many of the candidates were at months ago. Look, we know who he is. We know he's been the mayor of New York. We know he has a horrific history of stop and frisk and so many other policies. But we also, he's unvetted in the sense that he hasn't had to answer these questions on a national stage. So it's really concerning that he's able to buy so much ad space, buy so much ad space, and then basically get himself into the lead in some polls and stuff without having to actually answer the questions that we're now asking him. So I don't know. Bloomberg is a big area of concern. Elizabeth Warren, so she came out attacking mostly Bloomberg. Though she did thread the needle on the attacks on Bernie, one thing that she did, and she's being very careful with it, I think she probably has someone on her team like, look, we're not going to attack Bernie. We have to stand in alliance with him on progressive ideals. So we talk about how we support progressive ideals, universal health care and such, but we're going to go after on the how to, which was good that she brought it up. That's what she has to do, but there's not enough time in that debate format that for her to actually speak about the differences between her plan and his plan. I would have loved to see it. She eviscerated Bloomberg over the NDAs and about the whole kill it controversy where he had told a female employee to kill it in reference to a baby, allegedly. And so he contested that. She was very passionate about speaking about that. And then she also talked about how he supported the re-election campaigns of Lindsey Graham and then another Senate candidate who was an anti-choice candidate, I think Republican as well. So she's tying him to the support for Republicans. And it was weird because you expect like these woke cultural signaling things to go over well with the crowd, while they didn't. So that's why I think that he's kind of like bought seats in the crowd, or that he's got a lot of establishment people in the crowd for him, because like who doesn't cheer over Me Too virtue signaling these days, except maybe people in the Republican Party. So I was just surprised that she didn't get the pop that she probably was expecting for it. Anyways, I think that without the pop that without the pop that she wanted to get from the crowd, she kind of looked impassioned without like support. So that made her look worse. But at the same time, she's bringing up all the NDAs and all the things that he allegedly said, and she's bringing up his taxes. So he didn't look good either. So the Warren versus Bloomberg thing, I don't think worked out well for either one of them. Klobuchar, I ain't got anything. Like, it was just, it was more of nothing from me. I don't even want to bother trying to analyze. We all know what she's saying. Bernie's bad. We need someone who gets things done, and I'm the centrist and going to reach across the aisle, blah, blah, blah. Double speak. Tom Steyer, there was not too much. He did say that he did come up against Bernie Sanders, saying that democratic socialism is not the way to go. But the most notable part with Tom Steyer was the exchange that he had with Joe Biden, where Joe Biden attacked Tom Steyer for allegedly, I don't know the details of this. I didn't read about it or hear about it prior to this, was that Tom Steyer purchased a for-profit prison as an investment, and Tom Steyer came back like ready to fight, and he was like, well, I sold it right away, and beyond, and like furthermore, I've done XYZ for Black and Latino men and women across the country. And then he talked about his record with with minorities in the country, and then he went after Biden on the crime bill. So I think it just goes to show that look, Biden is really banking on South Carolina. Why do I say this now as I'm discussing Tom Steyer? Because Tom Steyer actually has big numbers in South Carolina, surprisingly. I forget if he's like 12. No, he's got to be higher. No, I think he's like 20%. Around some, or maybe a little less than that, but he's quite high. It's right now as it stands, Biden, Bernie, and then Tom Steyer in South Carolina. And I think that Biden's afraid that Tom Steyer is taking away from the Biden vote in South Carolina. So that shows that Biden really wants to win South Carolina. He wants to get as many votes as he can away from Tom Steyer. He doesn't want Bernie to close that gap. And but speaking of Biden, in this debate, he went after the threats to his staying in the race, and that's Bernie and Tom Steyer. And yeah, like I said, he's putting all his eggs in South Carolina. One thing that I found interesting, and I think this is just speaks to the larger debate within the Democratic Party. They asked Joe Biden, I think the question had to do with how are you going to, I forget whether it was help African Americans or elevate the standard of living for Black people in the country. And Joe Biden's first response was like, oh, we're going to create wealth. I'm going to help the Black community create wealth. And this whole idea of wealth creation at a time where we are the wealthiest nation ever to exist in the history of humanity, is like, not to say that I'm against, entrepreneurship, especially in African American communities and minority communities at all, but that you're going to make the point about these people need to create wealth and we need to do things to help them create wealth. Well, what about the fact that we already have all this wealth and it's concentrated in the hands of a few? And I think that's the real difference between the worldview of Joe Biden, who's talking the talking points from the 90s, versus the talking points of now the 2020s, where populism, I think, is here to stay. And it's talking about how wealth has been distributed over the last 40 years and what we're going to do to make sure that never happens again. Because all the wealth that has been created over the last 40 years has been concentrated, like Bernie says, in the hands of a few. It's an oligarchy. So it's good to talk about entrepreneurship. It's good to talk about wealth creation. But let's pull back a little bit and let's talk about where this problem starts from. And that needs to be resolved before we get to the next point, in my opinion. So Bernie Sanders, I think he weathered the storm tonight. He got in all his talking points. When healthcare came up, he got to say the things that he wanted to, but they're just his general talking points. They weren't like really answering the questions, the critiques that everyone was saying. Even the critiques weren't that detailed either. So anyways, Sanders, like I said, he went after Bloomberg right away. So he sees Bloomberg as a threat. And yeah, like he wasn't given the opportunity to talk about paying for his programs. There was one point though where they had asked him the question about how are you going to pay for it? And Bernie started off with saying, well, how much time do you have? And I don't know. It's not bad, but I think that's going to be like fodder for Republicans, for conservatives to go after him. Like, look, he can't even give like a few talking points about how he's going to pay for his programs. So, but here's the thing, like, why do we have to go into these things when you're talking about like robust programs to alleviate strife for the American people, like Medicare for all, like free education through public college and free child care for everyone under 4 years of age as well. Why do we have to reduce it to a quick 90-second response on a debate stage? Yeah, like how much time do you have? Like, I think that would be a great thing if Bernie Sanders was able to say on that stage how he's going to pay for a specific program, and not be expected to do it within the time frame allotted by the moderators, which they did a bad job moderating, like I said. Bernie Sanders' foreign policy was excellent. The pundit class on in the mainstream media, they're going to say otherwise. They're going to say, oh, well, he didn't denounce Cuba. He didn't denounce Castro. He didn't, he did, first of all, but he didn't do it in the way that they like to. Now, here's my issue with it. The mainstream media, the mainstream media is horrific when talking about foreign policy. To them, there is zero nuance, meaning that when you talk about the Castro regime in Cuba, from when they led the revolution in 1959, and then they still have control of the government now, from then until today, the only thing you are allowed to talk about is the authoritarian aspects of that regime, which, yes, are horrific if you take them as they are. But if you take them in the context of what happened in Cuba prior to that, and how Batista was supported by the United States for years and taking bribes from American investors, and how the mob was involved in Cuba, and how it created the environment for an uprising, a revolution over there. None of that is allowed in terms of the conversation. And then you also talk about the good things that Castro did in terms of educating his people and giving them health care and everything. That can't be part of the conversation. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that you can't talk about good and bad. Like, what the hell? Like, why do we have to come down with a moral judgment? Because it gives you ratings? Because it's easier to digest to be able to say Castro equals bad? No, Castro equals bad and good and bad on this and good on this, and authoritarianism is really bad, and education and literacy programs are very good, and healthcare for all your citizens are very good. And why can't we talk about things with nuance? This is ridiculous. And so I'm putting it on the mainstream media. I'm putting it on candidates like Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar and Joe Biden, who suck at this. And no matter how much foreign policy experience they all think that they have, they really can't get it right in terms of talking about the nuance. And Senator Sanders was correct. Barack Obama actually maintained that level of nuance in talking about Cuba, but none of them else on stage did. And they're sounding a lot like the Republican Party, who want to paint it one way or another. So, like I said, I think that the pundit class is going to hate it, but I actually think, and this is just based on my own experiences with American friends and family who maybe don't have as much foreign policy knowledge or whatever, but they at least get it when you talk about things with nuance. They get it. They understand that not everything is bad, is just bad. Not everyone is like simply just good. They get that there's good and bad, and they understand that the United States had they played a bad part in some part of Cuban history and everything. But one thing also that Sanders did that was impressive was he doubled down. I was trying to figure out what was the verb in that phrase, doubled down. And that was good, because when they attacked him on that, he went further to say that what the United States did, or he said that authoritarianism is also bad in Nicaragua, in Saudi Arabia, in Chile, and these are places where the United States has supported authoritarianism. So I thought that was great. And I think that that's going to make him look stronger, kind of in the way where when Donald Trump in 2016 would say something that's unconventional and he doubled down on it as well, he came out stronger. So I think Bernie, this is going to work to his favor. And look, it might be wishful thinking. I don't know, but that's really where I think it's going to go. So that's what I got on the debate analysis. This was, like I said, it was not a pleasure to watch at all by any means. It was really annoying. Tonight I'm just over it. I just want to be done with this. I didn't even want to do this. One of my friends, she hit me up and she's like, "Oh, I can't wait to see your analysis because I missed the debate." And I was like, "Well, I'm glad you missed it because it sucked and I'm not looking forward to putting my notes together." But I did anyways. I do enjoy recording these and talking to you and having that conversation. But tonight's debate was just shit to work with. It wasn't much. Anyways, my predictions, I don't know. I don't know if how or if this debate is going to affect anything because substantively there wasn't much to go further with anyone. And there wasn't any like home run moment or there wasn't any like major thing happening. So I'm going to say number one, I think Biden ekes it out. But I think it's going to be neck and neck because in prior contests, Biden has underperformed every single time. So I think that he'll underperform. I think Sanders will overperform. I don't know if Sanders will get that edge over him. I say it's neck and neck, but those are my interchangeable ones. If it's not Biden at number one, Sanders is number one, Biden is number two. But I say one Biden, two Sanders. Steyer, I think he beats out both Warren and Buttigieg. And I say that Warren has more African American support, so I think she's going to get number four, and I think Buttigieg is going to come out number five, and he's going to give a speech after the contest on Saturday, talking about how it was a win for him. So yeah, fuck you. So annoying. Big picture, the media is just like going wild. They see that Sanders is close to taking this. If he wins South Carolina, I think there's there's already so much momentum going into Super Tuesday. There's talks of him winning California and Texas. California by a big margin. And I don't know the margin in Texas, but that's big if he wins Texas because then he gets to say, like, look, I get to put Texas into play for the general election. Then Texas becomes a swing state. And for Texas to be a swing state, even if the Democrats don't win it, the electability critique of Sanders starts to fade away. So the mainstream media doesn't like it. The Democratic establishment doesn't like that Sanders is about to go away with this. He's about to change the party. And the reason they don't like it is because the way that he's about to change the party is he's taking moneyed interest out of it. And so a lot of these motherfuckers are about to lose their jobs. So he's going to make them unemployed. But the good thing about a Sanders presidency is that Sanders would likely have the most robust unemployment program that exists. So for all of you mainstream media and DNC establishment types that might be unemployed come January 2021 because of Sanders, don't worry, he's going to take care of you. So anyways, I joke about that, but they definitely don't like him. And they're really taking the knives out. I mean, the fact that they brought up Cuba in the last week, and they're going to try to bring up everything. They're going to bring up his honeymoon in Moscow. Every which way they're trying to bring it out. I think it was on The View where Rahm Emanuel was Obama's former chief of staff. He's a big Democratic strategist, establishment type. He just flat out said it. He says strategy one is get him out. Strategy two, get him out. Strategy three, get him out. So they just want to get rid of Bernie Sanders. And it's insulting to those of us who support the senator. Like, it's like, you really want to discard our vote that much. You really have that much disdain for us and for the hopes and dreams that we have for this country. So right now we are in the midst of a war within the Democratic Party. we'll see how it goes down on Saturday. I'll come back with more analysis. Probably, I think I'll come back on Saturday. I don't know. We'll see. But definitely after Super Tuesday, because there's not going to be a debate between the contest on Saturday, South Carolina, and the states on Super Tuesday. Anyways, that's all I got. Thanks for watching, guys. This is Johnny Jabbour on Johnny's Jabs. Catch me on Instagram, Twitter at Johnny Jabbour, JohnnyJabbour. Like, comment, subscribe, interact with me. It's a lot of fun. I love when people talk to me about it. And yeah, let's do it again. I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.